Tricky situation, isn't it? Because we've seen what happens when governments get involved in technology. Sometimes, even in the UK and the European Union, bloody hell. I remember speaking to, I don't know if I have permission to say his name either, but he is the CTO of one of the biggest technology companies in the world. And he was explaining to me that they can't release their features, this particular piece of hardware. We can't even release it in Europe because the European Union have so much regulation that they've actually created a bunch of issues for us as companies. One of them was that in this particular device, the European Union demand that the battery can be taken out and put back in again. And what this actually means, he was explaining to me, is that we're going to have to buy loads of batteries and keep them on the shelf, and then they're going to go bad. And actually, it's going to be worse for the environment, but also it means that the devices are no longer waterproof. So more devices are going to break, which is even worse for the environment. Yeah. And this over-regulation that's
Which means that the Europeans are nowhere in terms of technology.
And not competitive.
They're not competitive.
So and do you know what he said to me? He goes, and I don't think what the Europeans don't realize is we just don't need their market anymore. He said, Brazil's coming online. And all these other big markets are coming online as buyers. So we just can decide just to not sell to Europe.
So there are three systems out there, right? Broadly speaking. One system, the United States system, most power in the hands of the private sector, so much so that they're able to capture the regulatory process, write their own regulations. That turns out that system drives an enormous amount of growth and wealth. The problem is that lots of average Americans do not benefit from it. Because nobody is looking out for them. Then they get angry and then they lash out, right? The Chinese system, where the state actually captures the private sector and they say what the private sector can and can't do. And frequently they own the private sector, state-owned enterprises, right? And that system drives an enormous amount of growth over the long term, but the people have no say over what is and what is not allowed. And that creates a lot of dissent and this lying flat, we're not a part of the system and the solution. Then you have the Europeans. And the European system is very oriented towards, we want to make sure that the social contract works for the citizens. We're very interested in having all of the benefits that people need, but we can't afford them because our system is so heavily regulated, so anti-entrepreneurial that we don't drive the growth that would be necessary to keep paying for the people, right? So obviously, each of these systems have challenges. But the problem comes not in the nature of the system, but in when they become extreme. Americans today want a New Deal, whatever that New Deal looks like. And Trump won because of that. He won because he positioned himself as the outsider that would make sure those things happen, right? He was the guy that was going to end the wars. He was the guy that was going to invest in the United States. America first, not these other countries first. People like that. Take care of your people. That's what they want. People are voting for very simple things. They want to be taken care of. They want to have opportunities for themselves and their families and their communities. They don't want to feel despair. That's what the American dream was all about. That's why my grandparents came here. My grandma, Armenian, her family fled the genocide. She came on Ellis Island. That's why I'm here. I came and I started a company in a land that had great opportunity, but most Americans don't believe that applies to them anymore. And you asking me all these questions about AI, the answer is very simple. Give these people the opportunity to create a dream for themselves and their families in their own countries. If they don't have that, they will eventually revolt against you.
Is that what history tells us happens next in such a situation where the people feel more and more powerless and they feel like they have less and less opportunity?
It doesn't happen everywhere. I mean, let's face it, we've got 25 million people in North Korea that have been, ruled by, a cult figure who they essentially worship for decades now. So history doesn't necessarily tell us that the story always goes well.
But in a democracy?
In a democracy, sometimes democracies go bad. But what we see frequently is pushback against people that are kleptocratic, but it's people that put themselves above the system. And we've seen that in many cases, in many democracies all over the world.
70% of people who add something to their online cart never actually buy it. And that number is based on over 10 years of research. But what I think is even more interesting is what the Baymard Institute discovered. They're a private research company that ran a study which found the average e-commerce store could increase its conversion rate by 35% just by making its checkout easier. Not better marketing or better products, but by delivering a smoother checkout experience. So if you're looking for an easy way to make your checkout process smoother, I want you to think about moving your business onto Shopify. Shopify. It's the platform we use to sell the 1% diaries and the conversation cards because it's so simple and smart to use. It puts all of our inventory payments and analytics in one place and has so many AI tools to help us get up and running straight away. Not to mention that it grows with you regardless of the stage that your business is at. So if you're ready to fix your checkout process, sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/Bartlett. That's shopify.com/Bartlett. And don't tell anybody. We have finally caved in. So many of you have asked us if we could bundle the conversation cards with the 1% diary. For those of you that don't know, every single time a guest sits here with me in the chair, they leave a question in the diary of a CEO. And then I ask that question to the next guest. We don't release those questions in any environment other than on these incredible conversation cards. These have become a fantastic tool for people in relationships, people in teams, in big corporations, and also family members to connect with each other. With that, we also have the 1% diary, which is this incredible tool to change habits in your life. So many of you have asked if it was possible to buy both at the same time, especially people in big companies. So what we've done is we've bundled them together and you can buy both at the same time. And if you want to drive connection and instill habit change in your company, head to thediary.com to inquire and our team will be in touch. I think the part that I still have this big question mark in my head about is what you do about that. I was reading this morning that Jeff Bezos is investing or raising money, raising $100 billion for, I think it's called Project Prometheus, which is his own AI company. You've got Elon with xAI, you've got Anthropic, you've got Dermis at Google and Sundar, you've got OpenAI, Sam Altman, you've got all these big tech CEOs that are trying to sort of raise super intelligence, like it's a child.
Yeah.
And if they are to be successful, one would assert that intelligence itself is the most powerful commodity, like currency or commodity that there isn't on planet Earth. So those that wield it.
And commodity is right, because Altman talks about you're going to need to pay for intelligence the way you pay for water.
Yeah.
Or pay for gas. And that average American hears that and goes, what? Yeah, I'm going to have to pay for intelligence?
Yeah.
That feels like something we have free will over. Suddenly you don't. Suddenly a company has control over that.
You know, if you had a wand and you could wave the wand and solve this techno oligarchy, what would you do?
I want three things. I want three types of governance. First, I want to make sure that the United States and China start to have AI arms control conversations. When we were fighting the Soviets, there were no arms control discussions until after 1962, Cuban Missile Crisis. We almost blew up the entire world. That was super dangerous with much, much lower levels of technology. And then after that, we said, oh, maybe we should have a hotline between the two leaders. Oh, maybe we should have deconfliction. Maybe we should not invest in certain areas. Maybe we shouldn't try to develop Star Wars defense, for example. Maybe we should have some arms control agreements that limit, what we do so that it's safer. We desperately need that between the Americans and the Chinese. That's number one. Second thing we need, the financial markets. We all need the financial markets, right? We need them systemically. When there's a financial crisis, the whole world comes together to get out of the financial crisis. And it doesn't matter if you're capitalist or communist. The People's Bank of China, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Fed, they all work together because they are first and foremost technocrats who understand that we need the markets to function. You need something like that for AI. You need an AI stability board so that whenever there is a model that creates a danger to us globally, like Anthropic just did last week, that model is dangerous to all of us globally because any software with a potential bug in it is findable by that model and it can be exploited. That's an incredibly dangerous weapon. So we don't want everyone to have that. So you need at scale, because everyone's going to develop this stuff, you need an AI stability board like the Financial Stability Board that is governed by technocrats, by people that have an independent capacity to identify threats to the systemic environment, the AI environment, that we need to work, that can communicate that to the people that have power and that can immediately attack and address it, right? That's the second thing we need. We don't have that yet. The third thing we need is we have to have an ability to fund AI for people that otherwise would not be able to take advantage of it. We've got half of Africa that doesn't have electricity. The gap between people with electricity and people who don't have electricity is going to be a hell of a lot worse when it's AI. It's going to be a gap between people that act like empowered human beings, hybrid individuals that have AI as a principal relationship and can deploy that knowledge, and people that we won't even treat as human beings.
Like a different species almost.
Like a different species. That's unacceptable. We can't allow humanity to develop that way. So we have to spend the money to ensure that everyone has access. We aren't close to that.
What about the domestic economy here in the United States or in, I don't know, the UK or any of these countries that are developing the technology?
Same as the last point. It's the exact same thing.
Okay, so you've got to also fund...
Yeah, it can't just be global. I mean, the Americans will not care about this. If this is like for sub-Saharan Africa, they'll be whatever, right? It's them. I'm saying this is something that is necessary for humanity. But when I looked at Artemis going around the moon, we're looking down. I don't see borders. I see 8 billion people. I mean, if anyone that came down that wasn't being shot up from the Earth and came down, anyone that came down to the Earth would look at us and they say, oh, look at this, 8 billion people. They don't see borders, right? And the first thing they would learn if they learned how we actually operate with our 8 billion people is, wow, you guys, given the technology you're developing, you have nowhere near adequate governance for 8 billion people. You guys are all divided into and all of these short-term decisions you're making that are so inefficient, and you're going to destroy yourselves. That's what they'd say. That's what they say. And I say that as a person who is a citizen of the country that created the United Nations, because we understood the last time we almost destroyed ourselves in a world war, we can't do that anymore. So we need more global governance. We need more forums that bring everyone together, not that divide us apart. We're not heading in that direction right now.
We are not heading in that direction right now.
Yes.
I mean, we're certainly heading in the opposite direction in every sense of the word.
In the opposite direction, in most senses of the word. But technologically, one could imagine that we're developing the tools that will help us move in that direction if we wish to.
There is another version of the future, isn't there, where sometimes I question whether it's possible because the human condition is so, contaminated with all of these sort of darker parts of ourselves. But sometimes I wonder if there is like a version of the future which is utopia.
I don't see how there isn't. I mean, I don't see how you allow human beings to create the kind of tools that we have and not have the ability to use them for good. The big stories of the world over the past 50 years, my lifetime, those big stories have been about growth. Those big stories have been about how human beings are living for longer with better education and better healthcare and more wealth and less starvation and less poverty. Those have been the big stories of the last 50 years. Now, you can say maybe it's a blip, but actually when you look at humans' history on the planet, it's generally moved towards more capacity. We've just had a couple of really bad episodes.
And information spreads so quickly that we hear about these bad episodes in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise. It feels the algorithm's serving me up what's going on 10,000 miles that way.
And I worry the most about that. I worry the most about people getting programmed. I'm not worried about artificial general intelligence. I'm worried about human beings becoming more computer-like. When you spend all of your time on your smartphone, that is a computer programming a human being, and we're acting more like the computer when we know that we're not like that. We know that we're more like who we are over the last few hours. We're sitting here, we're having a conversation with each other. I've never met you before. We know a bit about each other, but we're having a real conversation. That's a humane conversation. As soon as it gets intermediated by algorithms, as soon as you get programmed into a lane, we become much more inhuman. And I worry, that's why I hate prediction markets. The idea that we're going to, instead of looking at our political institutions as things that we've built that serve us, instead we create a casino out of them. And we only care about whether we're in or out of the money. That human beings don't operate that way. Companies that want to line their pockets make us work that way. We're being forced away from being our better selves. We need regulations and governance models and companies that help us be more of our better selves.
What's interesting is as a podcaster, you sit in this really interesting position where I don't have like a boss or an overlord telling me who I can interview and who I can't. And my team know me so well now that they would never even mention the implications of me interviewing someone to me. And what I say that is like, they would never come to me and say, Stephen, you should interview Ian, but just so you know, this is his politics. And if you interview him, these people might scream at you. Oh, yeah. They know me so well that they would never even mention it. So I say this to say that I have the opportunity to be like truly independent. And that means that, last week we had Ivanka Trump on, I had Michelle Obama on, then Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, and I've interviewed Mamdani. And it's funny when you sit in this position and you look at your, the list of people that want to come on the show and that you've asked, can we reach out to these people? And you see every name. And yet that this, having a conversation, because of the algorithms, with someone that half my audience don't agree with, is going to cause like real anger. But like, it's what I also find to be really funny is like when I meet these people in real life that half my audience hates, for some reason,
you connect with them.
I can see like a lot of the time they have a disagreement about the path, but they all agree on the destination.
Well, no one's a villain of their own story. The one thing I would tweak of what you just said, you said, because you're independent, you have the opportunity, right, to do what you want and to say what you want, to interview whoever you want, handle you. I think you have the obligation.
Yeah.
In this environment, independence is a responsibility because there are so many people that are not in your position or my position, that aren't independent, that can be fired, and they do not have the same opportunity. And instead, we can't be angry at those people. We have to recognize that, no, we are fortunate enough to be independent, and if you can't be fired, we have an obligation to be out there and above the 50% of people that are going to hate you for whatever reason.
Can I ask you a question then? Do you think I need to say something to the audience on why this is so important?
Of course you do. I think you do that through your conversations, but I think being mindful of it is important. I mean, it's about being authentic to who you are. I mean, you and I may not have exactly the same values. We may not have the same priorities, but if you're being honest about yourself with your audience, about what matters, you're doing that through your podcast, your conversation. It's about never selling out when you do that. It's about never pulling back and saying, oh no, that might irritate someone, so I'm not going to say it. That's not who you are. Yeah. You can't do that. Yeah. Right? Because again, that's what mainstream media does, and that's why they're in trouble.
I completely agree. And I think it's funny because sometimes I think that the audience might not understand that. But the reality is, in the real world, when I go outside and I speak to people, they understand that and they appreciate that. It's just sometimes, I think, vocal minorities that really don't want to hear from someone that disagrees with them at all. But are
they really vocal minorities, or are they bots? Are they algorithmically created?
No.
When you and I are on the street and people come up to us, and it's random.
Yeah.
It's overwhelmingly friendly.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think the digital world is not really a human world. And that's why it's so much more important to do more live, just get out there, also do more long form. The more that we can do to resist the algorithm, the better we'll be as a planet, the better we'll be as a species.
I'm so in love with the idea of like talking to people you disagree with or just have a difference of opinion with. I'm so in love by I remember reading a quote once that said, if you have the same opinion, if you have the same complete set of opinions as one group of people, those are not your opinions. And I find that to be really, really true because I can steal and take ideas and opinions that I agree with from almost everybody that I speak to. And this is such a strange position to take in an algorithmically driven world where the echo chamber will unbelievably reinforce and protect me if I just choose a side.
That's right. And part of my life that resists this is that my view is that if you hold the same opinions as the world is changing, you will be wrong.
True, yeah.
But the algorithm doesn't want you to change your views.
Yeah. Is there any closing remarks that you have for the listeners based on the journey we've been on?
I mean, again, I know you're based, you're Brit.
I live in Los Angeles as well.
Yeah, I know. But still, I mean, you got an accent and I mean, you're global. You're 4 years old, you bought Botswana, right? That whole story. I mean, the fact is that you've managed to build something global without promoting irresponsible lies and hatred and dislike. And I don't think you're bad for people, right? And we need more of that. Look, I mean, when I think about where power is coming from, it's not just tech companies. It's also people outside of established political force. When I was a kid, here's what we're talking about. I was in second grade. I think my teacher's name was Miss Kritikos. She was Greek. And she was asking us, we were talking about the elections, and she was asking us who wanted to be president. And she was talking about what it meant to be president. I remember raising my hand, of course, and everyone's talking. I was thinking how cool it would be. And then all of a sudden she said, Ian, well, why would you want to be president? And I looked around and I realized that I was the only person that had my hand up, which did not make any sense to me at the time. I would not have my hand up today. I thought when I grew up, I really believed that like public service was the ultimate expression of how you make a difference. That is no longer true. But it's not because our system is so broken, it's so bad. It's rather that we have created all sorts of opportunities for people to really make a difference globally outside of political institutions. And I've devoted my life to that professionally, and I think it's incredibly important, right? And maybe people don't all agree with me all the time. Obviously, that's fine. But they do know that I really care about what I'm doing, and I'm trying to get better over time. Right? That's all we can do. And I don't think that has to be, it turns out I'll go through my life and hopefully I'll have a long and healthy life. And I don't think I'll ever have served in public office, but hopefully continue to have more and more impact in a good way over time.
Yeah, I remember hearing Neil deGrasse Tyson say something very similar, where he said the most powerful people on planet Earth are no longer the elected. They are those that influence the electorate because they end up going to the polls and making that decision. And so it is a huge amount of responsibility in such a world for people like yourself, who I do think do a public service in educating all of us. I mean, look at all these books in front of me. Unbelievable how many books you've written and how incredible they all are.
I don't know how you found them all, but they are out there. Yeah.
I'm going to link all of them below. And I would ask my audience to take a look at the variety of different, I think this is the most recent one, The Power of Crisis.
Yeah, another one coming out next year.
2.
Yeah.
What's the new book coming out?
Don't have a title yet.
Oh, you don't have a title? Okay.
No.
The Power of Crisis, How 3 Threats and Our Response Will Change the World. And in this book, you talk more about AI as one of those threats as well. But I'm going to link them all below. And I highly recommend people go and follow you both on your YouTube channel, where you make content frequently about these issues as they're evolving, if you want to keep in touch with Ian's perspective. And also over on your X page. You've got over 1 million followers over on X.
I do.
Big audience over there. We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're leaving it for.
Okay.
And the question left for you is, I cannot read this. Okay, here we go. When you are on your deathbed, how will you describe your life?
Unanticipated.
Sounds like a good life.
Definitely. I mean, let's face it, my optimism comes from the fact that we have no idea what we did to deserve being here.
Yeah.
So every day is kind of like it's a bit of a gift, right? And the more you can remember that, the more I think the better off we are.
Ian, thank you. I really appreciate all the work that you do.
Man.
And I've been watching you for many, 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 many years. And whenever the world descends into turmoil and I'm looking for someone who can turn the lights on for me, you're the person that I come to. Typically on YouTube, I watch most of your stuff on there, but I also follow you on X and find your takes incredibly accessible and demystifying, which is, I think, exactly what we need more of at this time. So you are doing a public service, even though you're not running a country. You're helping people like me understand all of this craziness and therefore hopefully live better lives and make better decisions as to who we elect and how we think about the world and how we treat one another. So thank you for doing that. It's a great service to humanity.
Well, it's very motivating to hear that, frankly. And I promise you I'll keep doing my best on it.